Right, good morning everyone and welcome to the second meeting of the Pollok Oral Archive. Today really is going to concentrate on the interface between the demise of Lanark and the movement of fans to Pollok, and just looking at the state of affairs with your position up to Lanark, and then the move to the Pollok and see how things go on from there. I would actually like to start with a quote before I go around and ask you to highlight your history there. But it's talking about the end in 1967, June 1967, when the winding up order of Lanark was issued by the Court of Session. It talks about opinions vary on who was to blame for all this. Investigations were made and the Board of Trade criticised Chairman Bill Hiddleston, who was to die of a heart attack in November that year. Other directors were investigated. The club never revived. The final death throes were so drawn out and tortuous that even the most ardent of supporters had become bone weary of the endless claim and counterclaim. People drifted away, never to return. A Scottish institution was lost. And I think that sums it up, because the demise of Lanark was probably losing a part of the body for some of you. Your club had gone. It's not like Rangers today, where they had to go back down and start again. But that was them finished, and an institution was lost. But can I maybe start with you, Stuart?
Okay.
And what your days of high were all about.
It was probably George, taken to Catherine by my father.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't meet him, but his father as well was Lanark, so that's going back to the Warriors.
Uh-huh.
But my father wrote away to Bob Shankly. Am I getting it right? Which one is it?
Bob.
To Bob Shankly when I was on holiday for the Glasgow Fair at Troon, and my father was coming down for the fair as he always did. So he arrived and he told me he'd sent a letter to Bob Shankly. Mm-hmm. Asking if I could be a ball boy. So the letter came in, he came in from his work up from Glasgow this day, and he said, "There's a letter for you," and it's from Bob Shankly, telling me to report at Catherine on, I think it was Saturday the 5th of August or something like that. Mm-hmm. I was going to say Pollok there, the Lanark versus Rangers. Mm-hmm. And that was the infamous game where all the gates broke in.
Yes.
And I think George was you were a ball boy that day as well.
Yes, I was. That was the first game.
And we were looking out the back windows of the old pavilion, and we just saw the big gates going like that, and then boom, burst. Thousands flooded in. So I went out in front of the teams for my first game, and I don't know what was it, the crowd had 30,000, 40,000. What a noise when you would come out the wee tunnel, you know.
Yeah.
They didn't need ball boys that day because the park was all lined with spectators.
That's right.
But, and I think I remember right, I think it was 2-0 for Rangers, but that's irrelevant. Yeah. So that was how it started, and carried on as a ball boy there.
How many years, Stuart?
Well, it must have been about 3, I think. And then I gave it up because I wanted to go and follow the team away from home, because you had to report for reserve games. So I probably did about 3 years, and probably around about 14 or 15 I packed it in because I wanted to go to the away games, and that's how it finished up. But one memory, just a side issue, wee Jockey Robertson was a goalkeeper and he was a big Hearts man, and when I was behind his goal at the start of every second half, he'd come out and he'd say, "How's your Hearts getting on, son?" So then I met him at Armadale in the Scottish Cup tie. But what was I going to say there now? The famous Hilly Graham, McInnes line, 100th goal, I kicked the ball out the net. It was against Ronnie Simpson, a penalty kick. Hilly got ripped as they went through by Ronnie Simpson. In those days the goalies didn't get sent off for that.
No, that's right.
And Alec Halley just stepped up and blasted out the corner of the net. And I was on Scotch Sport that night behind the goal like that.
Right. Great.
So,
great story.
That's it. Then, as you say, it just gradually deteriorated, and I was going to places like Brechin and Forfar, and just always Montrose and you name it. Long journeys. I missed a bus, a supporters bus one day, and I got up to Mediterranean bus up to Brechin, I think it was. And I got a lift back in the team bus that day. Unfortunately, Mr. Hiddleston was on it. Were you one of these that was shouting at me? I said, no, Mr. Hiddleston, I wasn't shouting.
Did you have a similar experience yourself,
Very
George?
similar. I started going to see thirds in the mid-50s with my father and my grandfather and my uncle. How I became ball boy was my mother always got my father a season ticket. In 1961, August 1961, she was up at Caskin and it was George Young that was issuing the season tickets. So she didn't tell me, but she sent in a letter asking if I could be ball boy, and I got a reply. And the first game was the Rangers' first game of the season, 1961. The first game, as I say, was the 12th of August 61, when there was estimated 50,000 at the game. And Mr. Young briefed all the ball boys. I ended up behind the Mount Florida goal. I remained at the ball boy until 1963, and then Bill Hiddleston came in and brought in his own team of ball boys. About 1966 I lost interest with all the changing of the managers, Shearer, Evans, Frank Joyner. I started work in August 66, so I lost interest. I got married in 70 and stayed in Partick, so I didn't come over to games at Newlandsfield. But I moved back to Sims Hill in 1973, and when I travelled into work I passed Newlandsfield, and that's when I decided to start to come to the odd game. Eventually managed to persuade my father to come back to games, you know. So he got interested, and then my son was born in 71, and that's how I started to come to Pollok, you know.
Al, you were a supporter of the thirds, so you would go with Stuart for the majority of games, away games?
Yes. Well, my story is very similar. My father took me to reserve games initially in the late 50s. But I was born and brought up in Shawfield, so I would also come. I was also a Pollok supporter at that time, because we used to come here in the summer evenings in particular, but we used to come here on Saturdays as well, sometimes when the thirds were playing away. But I started supporting them home and away, basically rarely missing a game round about the early 60s. I was at that game in 1961 as well, and there was about 50,000 inside the park, as George says, and no need for ball boys, because the crowd was on the park. They were behind the goal, up the touchline.
I think I was on the park that day.
And how they managed to play a game of football, 2-0 for the Rangers. That was a famous game. So that was the early 60s. Hiddleston took control in 62, and they knew it was coming, because whether he had the majority of shares or not, I don't know, but he certainly had enough to win what they called a card vote. And there's a share certificate there, but a lot of these shares were held by local residents, you know, so and they never turned up at AGMs or meetings or anything like that. So he could outvote them. So when he got control, the rest of the board resigned, and they took over in late 62. And the demise was inevitable. Everybody knew that he had his eye in the park to build houses on it, but it was apparently zoned for sports usage only. And whether that was a late result or not, I don't know. But another of his acolytes was a guy called Bailey James Riley, who was, as the name suggests, was a councillor, and the two of them were in cahoots over all this shenanigans. And the club died a slow death. I mean, there was great times. I mean, I never ever saw the thirds beating the Rangers in all my time. But I saw them beating Celtic plenty of time. I remember going to Parkhead and they were 4-0 down in the first 20 minutes, and came back and drew 4 each at Parkhead. And in fact, the game after Hiddleston took over in December 1962, they beat Thurles beat Celtic 2-0 at Cathkin that afternoon, and it was a great Matt Gray got a goal. Hilly and Harley were away, I think, in '62. I think Matt Gray was the only one that was left. But Stuart and I used to go in the team bus, and like Stuart says, you were going to Forth and Alloa and Stranraer, and down to Stranraer and get beaten in the Scottish Cup once. I remember that 2-1, first or second round. And it became sort of they only ran one supporters bus as far as I knew. You know, there wasn't really a huge travelling support.
It was a travel club bus.
It was as well as a supporters bus
no,
that we.
I think that was
Yes.
a travel club bus.
And the crowds latterly, I would say, were less than 1,000 at the demise. So there wasn't a huge number of fans looking to go somewhere. They're all drifted off. A lot of them had all drifted off to other teams.
Like we went to Rangers.
So I would say, you know, they talk about a great influx of Third supporters coming here, but I think you're maybe talking about maybe 100.
I think that's coming from the Ayrshire mainly. You know, that's where that
Yeah.
theory came that, you know, a Thirds folding in a lot of Pollock's because a lot of Pollok did support go to Pollok,
Yes.
but not huge amounts, not hundreds.
No, it's not as if all of a sudden it was the birth of the Pollok or anything like that. And it was Roy that got us our season, convinced us to become members here and get our season tickets here. Roy and Dick Mason, I remember they were, obviously the club was short of cash, Roy. So, one of my claims to fame with the Third, Stuart kicked the ball out the net when they scored their 100th goal. But I think I was only the third Lanark supporter that got arrested. I got marched around the track at Muirton Park in Perth. It was at the time when it was about 1963, something like that. It was at the time where the fashion was to throw toilet rolls to celebrate a goal, and we went up the train that day, and I think we emptied every toilet in the train from Glasgow to Perth. It must have been about 250 toilet rolls, 250 toilet rolls on us. And the Third scored, Johnny Graham header. Johnny Graham, I think he played for Glencairn after that, and he went junior. He scored the goal, and we're all throwing toilet rolls on the back of the goal, and one landed at my feet, and everybody had finished, but I just threw one, and the big Bobby spotted me. You come here, marched around the track, out, thrown out, took my name. But I paid my 1 and 6 and came back in again.
But your father was sitting up in the stand and he said, just tell him it was a shitey game.
Had Huddleston been a supporter of the club, and did he just
I think Hiddleston had previously been on the board and get kicked off.
What was his occupation?
He was a crook. He done for resetting it.
That's right.
Which I think is a technical term for selling stolen goods. So he was in that. So, and everybody knew he was a bad egg.
He obviously had money.
Yes.
My father said he won money in the pools and he bought a pub down at Bedford Street.
Right.
That's where he was his background.
Was there one match at Cathkin that I recall, was it abandoned because of snow?
Probably, right. More
I think they were playing Celtic.
That's right, it was.
I was at that game, and I remember it get called off. It was nearly a riot.
50s.
After it started.
After the game had started, yeah.
It was the 50s.
I was there.
It was
that
heavy
day.
snow as well.
Very heavy snow.
Remember a cup tie against East Fife? I think it was a replay, and they couldn't play extra time because of the frost. 63 was the year. 63 was the year they had of the dreadful winter.
Yeah.
And there was no football at all from January, February, March through 63, and that's when they instituted the pools panel. And at the end of that time, Matt Gray was sold, because Hilly and Harley were sold in the summer of 62.
What year was Mark Ballounis, the fullback?
That'd be the late 50s.
Because I remember him well as a fullback.
I mean, my father can go back
And
to...
Lewis, I think, was a midfield player.
Joe Lewis.
48, 49.
was like,
See, well, I remember going there to see Mark Ballounis. The name
Yes, it
comes
stands
out.
out, that's right.
I mean, the team that you can all recite off is Robertson, McGilvery, Lewis, Riley, McCormack and Cunningham, Goodfellow, Hilly, Harley, Gray, McInnes. That was
Comes
the
off the
team.
tongue. Yeah, that's right. But that seems to... You say it was a gradual demise. What were the fans thinking? I mean, did they just drift away to other clubs? I mean, you mentioned that a lot would go to Rangers, which is in fact true. But Were the fans completely in the dark about everything, or?
There's so many stories circling
Yeah,
around,
yeah.
and when it actually came in April '67, I mean, there was an article in the papers not that long ago, and it was saying if Celtic and Rangers hadn't got to these two European finals, which Celtic won as well know, Studs would have been saved. There would have been an outcry, but there was so much concentration of Celtic winning the European Cup, Rangers going to Nuremberg for the Cup Winners' Cup final. Third Lanark folding was an afterthought.
No.
They said they would have been saved just like other clubs were saved when they went down.
But
Now, whether that's
most of the fans, I think, had enough. They were just sort of fed up with it all. I mean,
Yeah.
they saw it. We knew it was in it. I mean, maybe the demise was sudden, but we definitely did drift down through the divisions into the second division, and it was thank you going there on a Saturday.
when they did fold, likes of you and me and Roy, went away on a Saturday to anywhere, it was a good game on paper.
Yeah.
Motherwell versus Hibs,
Yeah.
Hearts versus Dunfermline. We went all over the place.
I think a lot of people didn't go back to football after it.
Nice.
A lot just.
Yes.
I mean, my father wasn't going to go back to see any other club,
Mm-hmm.
and I kept saying to him to come to Pollok, and I was not interested. But eventually did come back.
Well, I was like Al. I came to Pollok in the summer games when the senior football hadn't restarted. As I was saying, I was doing it all in Troon. I always saw the Troon's opening pre-season friendly of the season during the Glasgow Fair. So I had a wee bit of knowledge of Pollok. And I talked to Roy Burton, and he didn't know anything about Pollok because he was from Govan Hill. Well, I'm not far away from Govan Hill, but I had old Jimmy Dinwoody, who was a family member, who was a kitman here. My cousin was Gordon Dinwoody, so I had a wee bit of family background to it, plus coming here. So but it was an easier transition, maybe for me, coming here like Al, because we've been coming to Pollok games while Third Lanark had still been on the go, although they were closed for the close season. But Roy had no connection with Pollok, and he just started coming when I talked to him into coming along. And I remember him one day saying to me, you know, Stuart, he says, if Thirds had never folded, had never been at Hampden dressing room in a cup final.
And we by supporting Pollok, we supported a much more successful team than the Thirds ever were. The only trophy I ever saw them win was the Glasgow Cup.
Yeah.
Were you at the final of the League Cup in '59 when the Hearts beat them?
Yeah.
2-1.
Yeah.
Jokey Robertson put the shutters up.
Yeah. It was a
You
lovely summer
gave me
day.
that article about that, George, when you'd been to that thing in Wellcroft Bowling Club.
Yes,
And there was a, that's right, you gave me that.
yep, George McCallum, Davy Hilly.
Because there was a report of the game and that,
Yep,
you know, George had gone to
I mean,
something at Wellcroft Bowling
That's right,
Club,
yeah.
Third Lanark.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Third Lanark Pollok connection there, because Davy Hilly and Ian Hilly both played for the Pollok.
Yeah.
yep.
And my father told a story about when Davy Hilly went to the Thirds, and he was at Shawland's Cross one day, and Willie Govan approached my father. And Willie said, "We've not had any money. Pollok's not had any money from the Thirds yet for Davy Hilly, or it might be Ian Hilly as well." So my father said, "I get right onto that," and the Pollok got their money, but the Thirds were, I mean, even before Hiddleston, the thing that Thirds were a wee bit tight, you know, with money.
We certainly wouldn't have got it if Hiddleston had been in charge.
No.
And as you say, George, you lost interest in football, and I
Yeah.
think a big percentage of that. And I suppose by supporting Pollok, that sort of had to rekindle
Yeah.
a full interest in the club. And was that what happened once Thirds had gone? You then wholeheartedly channeled your interest into Pollok. Would that be right?
More
Stuart?
and more, it started off, as I say, going to good looking senior fixtures, and didn't matter whether it was Firhill or Shawfield or Motherwell or anywhere, Rangers, Celtic, but didn't worry, just put lots of good game. But more and more we were coming to Pollok games, more and more, and eventually, as Al said, Roy said to us, why don't you boys take out a membership, because you're coming to a lot of the games. So we did,
Yeah.
and then
Then you get in the committee. When did you go in the committee? Early 70s.
I think it was 71, I think it was 71, 72.
And then I was in the committee as well, and then you became secretary and then president, and Roy Pert became president. Charlie Dixon was a Thirds man. He was involved as well, wasn't he? He was a kit man.
So there really are quite a few Thirds fans who have gone on quite long
Yes.
times and
Oh yes,
donated their lives to Pollok, you know.
I mean, there has been a lot of Pollok or Lanark men that have passed away.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because you're talking about 50 years on now.
Jimmy Gregg apparently was the third man.
Yeah.
And you still come to games, George? You've continued
Yes,
that
I
with us
still
and anything?
home and away. Yeah.
Yeah.
George, you were match secretary, weren't you?
I was match secretary for 4 years, and I was in the committee for 13 years.
Yeah. And how was Pollok as a club when you all really put your shoulder behind the club, you know, regarding success? Or
Pollok blossomed in the early 70s with the building of
The
social club,
the social club.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of business acumen here, you know, Stuart Geddes, people that knew how to handle money appropriately and negotiate loans, etc. Jim McNaught, people like that. So there was, I don't think any of these guys had major Third Lanark connections all the same, but there was a sort of business skill associated with the club, which put it on the right financial footing, which then led to success in the park. Obviously, starting in the late 70s and the 80s. And we got relegated in 77 or something like that. But then we bounced right back up, and then Tommy Young came to the club, and he brought the team that won the Scottish Cup, effectively won the Scottish Cup in '81.
Just don't tell Dickie that.
Well, Dickie not still playing at that time.
Yeah, I think he was.
Dickie Brock was a manager in '85 who won the cup, but it was
Jimmy Harrow, I remember him well too. He was a cultured
It was
fullback
Tommy.
too.
Who was a manager in '81? Tom
He
McAllister.
wasn't a manager, he was a match secretary.
It was a match. Well, that's
Yeah, the
that's another story which
Yeah.
if you don't mind, I might tell.
Classic George.
Because Roy was the president at this time in '77, where we were. Remember, we beat us still at Shawfield, and I called an SGM because I had enough of this nonsense about match secretaries having to be Pollok members, and I called an SGM because you needed 25 votes because I wanted a manager at the club,
And it
and
passed.
would have no, it got hammered. It got beaten. I mean, that's why you've still got a match secretary. I think it got beaten by 150 votes to 25 or something like that. But what it did do was it brought in Tommy Young. Tommy McAllister saw it as an opportunity to bring in a coach, which I think made a difference.
I remember Roger saying to us, "Don't worry about it, Stuart. We'll do yous. We'll do yous."
I had to get 25 signatures to call an SGM. I think it's the only time there's ever been an SGM. The only time.
Well, no, there's been other ones.
Before our
Yes.
time, right.
Yeah, there's ones, I'm trying to recall what it was. But I think what Al said about the social club brought the club very much forward. But in saying that, there was still a certain amount of people who didn't want the social club. They didn't believe that alcohol and if you want in football. And it was great that the people who, with the experience of income, got that pass forward, because it certainly put the club in a forward footing. The club became very, very respected in the junior world, with the facilities we had and the way the stadium, and especially Campbell sitting there, he wasn't fully involved at that time, but the pitch became a pristine surface, and more neutral matches were being played at Newlandsfield because of the facilities we could offer, both on the playing side and also with entertaining people in the social club. And that was part and parcel of the way forward.
Stuart, was Davy Elliott a Thubs man? Did Davy go to Cathkin?
I think he may have went. He was never, you never saw him with a Third Lanark scarf on.
No.
But, you know, I think he went because we all did, you know, the crowd.
I mean, I went along with Al. I mean, I went with my dad to Ibrox, but really, when Rangers were away, I would go down to Third Lanark. So that was always your second sort of team.
Yeah, a lot of people.
I mean, George, sitting across from me, was a very respected match secretary, and I was sorry to see him go from the committee, step down from the post, and I still harbour the thoughts that you'll come back, George, in some capacity in the club, because, no, I mean that sincerely, because you were respected not just within the Pollok camp, but the way you handled yourself out with Pollok.
Thanks for
And
that, right?
It's nice. But just to, sorry, Stuart,
no, just as you and Alan know, a good friend of mine and yours, John Donaldson. John was a Shawlands boy,
Yeah.
Talon Road, and he moved down with work commitments in '66. To this day, John still follows the Pollok on the internet, and he phoned me on Thursday night just to wish us all the best and come time Saturday. He unfortunately only managed up to one final, and it was the Atherley one that Roy was the president, but he came up with his wife that day for that one, and he never managed it through work commitments. He worked at Manchester Airport and shirts and things. He could never make the Sunday finals. So anyway, he still phones up regularly and asks how it's going on, but he follows it on his Twitter or whatever it is, how we're doing, and he's wishing us all the best, and hopefully he can get up for the final this year.
I think that's quite a nice way to sort of bring this to an ending today, Stuart. It's a lovely story. But so in fact, when the Lanark fell, involvement from you round the table was quite quick to get fully involved rather than just come along and support it. And it's very interesting to see the move on from that to the social club. So there's real progress
I think
made over
summing
that
up,
period.
the demise of Third Lanark was very, very sad for the really dyed-in-the-wool people and for the south side, but it certainly helped Pollok to go forward, because there was, you've got 4 people sitting around the table here who were Third Lanark,
Yeah.
dyed in the wool, and they've come to Pollok, and there's other people that you don't know but were Third supporters have come here, and that benefited us as a club, and crowd-wise, etc.
Yeah.
It was sad what happened, but it benefited us in the long run.
Well, I think that's quite a nice way to finish. So Stuart McCulloch, Roy Hall, Al Reid, George Patterson, thank you very much for this morning's meetings and your comments.